A few weeks ago, I made a video about my original Mini Moog, which is now out of my studio for servicing purposes. But I got lucky, my new Mini Moog Voyager arrived around the same time. So I think it's now really cool to talk about the Voyager as well. And the Mini Moog Voyager is a very tough synth for me, because I always wanted to have a Voyager, but I read so many bad things on the internet about the Voyager. Many people said it's not the successor of the original Mini Moog. It is too soft, it doesn't sound good, it's unstable, and you shouldn't get one. And then I met other people telling me that this is by far the most thought out design by Bob Moog. It's quite brilliant, the sound is punchy and it's lovely. I was so many times just a few clicks away from getting one. I was never confident enough to buy one really. But now I pulled the trigger because I saw how expensive they have become in the last few years. And I got one pretty cheap and I thought, okay, now I mean, who needs vacation anyways, right? So once it arrived at my studio and I played around with it, I have to say that everyone is right and everyone is probably also wrong. But let's start from the beginning. The Voyager is kind of like the evolution of the Mini Moog, but I wouldn't say just an evolution, it's also an instrument in its own right. On paper, you have the same architecture. You have the 3 oscillators, you have the Moog ladder filter, you have the 2 envelopes. This is quite familiar territory and it fits the Mini Moog narrative quite well. But what you also get is those modulation buses on the left-hand side, which are very flexible, which you can program. You have a lot of different possibilities under the hood in the menu system. You also get this really nice ladder filter, which has a spacing control. And what that means is that you actually have a stereo filter or a blend between a high pass and a low pass filter. And if you go into the dual low pass mode, you actually have a stereo filter where you have 2 corner frequencies that can be tuned against each other with the spacing control. And that gives you a really interesting sound. I have to admit that. That's really, really cool. What you get as a whole package from the Voyager is kind of impressive. Because if you think about it, the Voyager is a revolution in its own right. It's insane how much modular capabilities the Voyager has. If you take a look at the back, you have so many inputs and outputs for different things that you can control with the Voyager. You can really integrate your Voyager into a modular setup, and that's insane. It's just so cool to think about how I could play the Voyager whilst having my modular rig going into the Voyager and then just having the filter at my disposal and just send out everything with gate controls and shaping the whole modular system with the Voyager. That's just insanely cool. It's a really, really nice setup. Also, the touchpad is very, very, very nice. I love that for playing sounds and just giving a more human element to certain automations. I use the Voyager now for my productions. I love the sound and the tones that it creates. It has the Moog sound, the Moog tonality. What made Moog always so special for me was the way that you can interact between the oscillators. So the way that these oscillators interact with each other is the greatest thing on earth. The sync sound of a Moog is the only sync sound that I like. I tried so many different oscillator sync modes and I never really liked them. On a Voyager, it sounds amazing. Also, the frequency modulation, the FM, it sounds so great. That's to me the special thing about Moog. Yes, the filter is great, yeah, it's a cool ladder filter and everything, but it's just overhyped for me compared to the rest that makes a Moog for me. And yeah, so that might be controversial for some people. Some people think, yeah, if the ladder filter is the greatest thing on earth, it's cool, don't get me wrong. I actually, by the way, like the fact that you can decrease the bass with the resonance, because sometimes the Voyager is like really, really, really big, and it's sometimes it blows all the other elements away. So it's cool to have the ability to have the resonance a little bit, just to give it a little bit of a low end cut, you know. So many people that I really love for the low end, they all had a Voyager. I mean, Jay Dilla used the Voyager. And if you hear E = MC square with Common, that track is ace. Also Martin Budrich, a great producer, I love him. He has a Voyager and I love his productions. And the Voyager is a modern classic. So if I think about the Voyager and how it operates and how it feels, it's very, very different from the Model D. Not just because of the way it sounds, but the way it operates. It's not a Model D, and I think that's a good thing. Now let's talk about the things that we've talked about earlier, which is kind of like the bad things about the Voyager. It is true, the Voyager is kind of soft, but we get to that later. And yes, the MIDI implementation is a little bit quirky, and at some points it's kind of frustrating to have those frequency knobs and you can't really pinpoint the right frequency, and sometimes it goes off even though you're like, oh, I really try to find that right frequency, and it's not always 100%. Yes, that's frustrating. What you have to understand is that the Voyager came out in the early 2000s, and Rudi Linhart told me that he helped Bob Moog to design and develop the Voyager. And back in the day, Bob Moog was kind of stubborn when it came to certain decisions with the Voyager. And one of the things was that Bob decided to go for some inferior op amps and transistors in the audio path, which led to a softer sound. And that softer sound came because the op amps were kind of slow, and that took away some of the buzziness of the oscillators, and also the filter wouldn't open up as much. And what you get is a softer sound. So there is something called the Slew Rate Mod, and you probably heard about this. And what this will give you is you will have faster op amps in that, and transistors will be changed, and this will give you a more buzzy, a more biteful tone. It's more closer to the Mini Moog than before. And apart from that, Rudi also told me that he can do MIDI modifications. So you can get a more precise control of the MIDI routing and the controlling of the MIDI parameters. And also, like, the tuning issues can be solved. This is also something that I realized. The Voyager needs like 5 to 10 minutes to warm up and to be like stable. This is something that was kind of annoying at first, because you have to play with a fine tune. And I mean, this is a synth that is 20 years old and it should be more stable. But it wasn't. And if you change the octave on the Voyager, at least on my Voyager, you have different tunings and you get different, slightly different tunings with the oscillators, which can be annoying. This can all be serviced and this can be modded, so I am going to do that. Unfortunately, my Voyager has not been equipped with the Slew Rate mod. I will do it at some point, and if I have the mod, I will give you some audio examples, and then we can compare some of the presets that I did for the Voyager. It won't be cool for every sounds, I guess, but it's worth trying out. It's sad that the Voyager got held back by some of its problems, but in general, the Voyager is a true Moog. It is a Moog, and it is the last synth that Bob Moog created. So I will keep it in my studio and treat it really well. So tell me, what do you think about the Mini Moog Voyager? What is your favorite part about it? What do you like? What do you don't like, maybe? And are you interested in a comparison between the Voyager with and after the Slew Rate modification? Let me know in the comment section. All right, see you in the next video.